Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be watching a video about what Judaism actually is. It is a video by Kagito, if that's how you say his name. I don't know everything there is to know about Judaism, so I'll be learning quite a bit today. But anyways, I'll be giving my commentary as the video progresses. And anyways, let's get started.
Judaism, at 4,000 years old, is one of the oldest monotheistic religions, and the granddaddy of Christianity and Islam. But even though its teachings helped
If I'm not mistaken, Judaism also had some influence from Zoroastrianism during the Jews' exile to Persia.
create the world's two most popular religions, many people don't know what Jews actually believe. What is the Torah? What's a covenant? And why don't people in the Middle East worship mermen anymore? Well, let's find out. Judaism developed here in the Eastern Mediterranean over the last 4,000-ish years. Today there are about 15 million Jews, making it the 10th.
Oh, okay, so this is, I see, the West Bank, or about Palestine, I guess, Palestinian territories. Argentina, Russia, huh. Okay. Anyways.
10th most popular religion on earth. Right, let's jump straight into their beliefs. 1. The Tanakh.
Oh, okay, so I don't think he went into that, but the 15 million Jews in the world are not necessarily religious Jews, because Judaism is an ethno-religion. That is to say that they are both an ethnicity and a religion. You could be born a Jew, and you could also convert into Judaism, although that doesn't really happen. So basically, you could be Jewish without even believing in God.
Tanakh is the Hebrew name for the Hebrew Bible, known to most English speakers as the Old Testament, but obviously they don't call it that since they don't recognize the New Testament. The Tanakh is actually a trilogy, and the word Tanakh is made up of the names of the three sections of the Hebrew Bible: T for Torah, N for Nevi'im, and K for Ketuvim.
Oh, okay. I never knew it was like an acronym source. Okay, that's cool.
The first section, the Torah, is the most sacred book of the Jewish people. The Torah consists of the 5 books shown here and is sometimes called the 5 books of Moses. Let's summarize this very long and very sacred book in a few paragraphs. Should be easy. In the beginning, God creates the world in 6 days and then has a deserved rest on the 7th. Later on, God starts talking to a guy named Abraham the Hebrew. He tells Abraham to leave his home in Mesopotamia and go to a land called Canaan, which is here. God makes a deal or covenant with Abraham, promising,
"I will make of thee a great nation,"
and offers the
They got that deep voice
whole
for God.
land of Canaan
to him and his descendants. To seal this special covenant, God said unto Abraham,
"Every man-child among you shall be circumcised.
I assume Abraham was like, we're gonna do what now?
Ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you."
Circumcision was a symbol literally cut into the flesh of the Jewish people to show their covenant with God, and has been done by every Jewish male for thousands of years. The covenant is extremely important in Judaism. Later, Abraham's grandson,
Yeah, I think they do that circumcision for baby boys, like 8 days into his life.
called Jacob, literally wrestles with God or an angel of some sort for an entire night. So from then on, Jacob
Well, okay. Abraham had Isaac, which then led to Jacob.
will be called Israel, one that struggles with God. Jacob / Israel has 12 sons, and their descendants will become known as the children of Israel, or Israelites, and give their name to the land of Canaan, now known as Israel. The children of Israel would be enslaved in Egypt, but then one of them, called Moses, would, under God's guidance, lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses and his people arrive at Mount Sinai, and here God gives Moses the entire Torah.
So Moses is from the tribe of Levi, which is one of the sons of Jacob. So he's like a grandson, I guess, in a way, of Jacob or Israel.
Which contains 613
Something about neighbors.
mitzvah or commandments, the most famous of which is the 10 Commandments, written on 2 stone tablets. This new covenant requires Jews to worship only this God and to follow his commandments. In return, God will bless the Jewish people and make them a holy nation living in the Promised Land, which is Israel. The Israelites would eventually form a kingdom, and one of their kings, Solomon,
Yeah, I didn't even notice that first. A wife collector doesn't. That's pretty funny. But not wrong, actually. He had was it 300 wives and 700 concubines. Yeah, that's a lot.
builds a holy temple in Jerusalem, which houses the Ark of the Covenant and becomes the sacred heart of Jewish worship. Ironically enough, Solomon's kingdom would cut itself in two: Israel, populated by 10 tribes descended from the sons of Jacob in the north, and Judah, populated by the other 2 tribes, primarily the Judah in the south. In 700
Judah and Benjamin, and I think Levi was, the Levites were kind of split between them. Yeah.
122 BCE, the Assyrians conquered Israel, leaving Judah as the sole surviving Jewish kingdom, which is why this guy, Judah, a random son of Jacob, and not even the one with the dazzling coat of many colours, gave the religion of Judaism and the Jews their name. In 586 BCE, the
Well, specifically, it was because the 10 tribes to the north were lost over time. That is to say, they were culturally assimilated to and physically displaced. And so the remaining Jews, from my understanding at least, correct me if I'm wrong, but the remaining Jews that were primarily from the tribe of Judah / Benjamin, they were the ones who retained their cultural heritage and became known as the Jews today.
Babylonians conquered Judah, demolished the Holy Temple, and sent the people into exile and slavery in Babylon. The destruction of the Holy Temple and the Babylonian exile is a heartbreaking historical event for Jewish people. But then, in 539 BCE, along came Cyrus with his big Persian army and cool hat. He wrecks the Babylonians, frees the Jews, and rebuilds the Holy Temple. And that concludes our retelling of the Tanakh.
Yeah, that's a very brief, I think, history of it. Summary of it, I should say. But yeah, Cyrus, I think he was referred to as the anointed, or the Messiah, basically. Or a type of Messiah, I should say, even within Judaism.
It is foundational to all Jewish belief, and my summary barely scratches the surface. So
Yeah.
you can go read more by checking out the links in the description, or just waiting until I make a video just about that. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Holy Temple, again, and sent...
Yeah, one thing to note is that CE is referring to Common Era. So sometimes we might hear 80, which is, what was it? Anno Domini, which is the year of our Lord. And so AD and BC is, well, BC is before Christ. And so these terms, BC, AD, are basically the Christians who created our current Gregorian calendar system. And so they have BCE and CE instead of BC and AD. That is before Common Era and Common Era, even though referring to the same event, which is the birth of Christ.
the people into another exile. The Jews would move out across Europe, North Africa and the Middle East, forming a diaspora, which periodically suffered persecutions, pogroms and genocides from their neighbours.
Yep.
This 2,000-ish year exile is considered to have lasted up until 1947, with the partitioning of Palestine and the creation of the modern state of Israel in 1948. Now, that was a very brief summary of 2,000 years of very
Yeah.
complex history, so please bear that in mind.
Yeah, I didn't even mention like the Holocaust, which is like probably one of the biggest things that led to the creation of the States of Israel. But I've also covered the history of Israel on my various other videos, so check those out if you want to.
2. God.
And also Israel, as in the country of Israel, is one of the most foundational aspects of Judaism. Like if you read the Tanakh, the Old Testament, much of the writing was literally about the land of Israel. So the land itself is quite central to the religion, or the ethnic religion.
So Abraham lived in a world that believed in many, many gods. You had your Marduks, your Nergals, you even had your Dagons. Everyone loves a Dagon. Look at him, fancy merman.
I think he was Dagon. He was the god of, or one of the gods of, the Philistines.
But Abraham believed in one God, an eternal, all-powerful, all-knowing creator of the universe and the source of all morality. He has no children, he has no rivals, and he has no equals. This is known as monotheism, and Judaism would spread this concept across the ancient world, acting as the origin for both Christianity and Islam.
Yeah, so this is a bit different from Christianity, because Christianity, how it defines God, is a triune nature. And so you have Jesus Christ, which is, I don't even want to explain it because like it's so freaking complicated. But I think Islam have a pretty strict view of monotheism as well.
Today, nearly everyone in this region follows a monotheistic religion, and merman worship has dropped significantly. The names of God used most in the Tanakh are Elohim and the Tetragrammaton,
Oh my gosh, what is that name, bro? Tetragrammaton.
which is
Yeah.
honestly one of the coolest words ever. The
True.
Tetragrammaton is the letters YHWH.
Right. So in the Bible, I guess it depends on the version of the Bible. This name is read in at least in the English translation as I am, like capital I, capital A, capital M, with a space in between, obviously. And other times, when referring to God, as in Him directly, so sometimes be written as capital Lord. So capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which is referring to His real name, that is YHWH. If I'm not mistaken, Elohim is more so referring to God as in capital G and in lowercase o and in lowercase d, while Adonai is also sometimes referred to as Lord, which is capital L and then ORD. lowercase.
The actual pronunciation of YHWH was lost thousands of years ago. Today,
And the reason why it's been lost over time is because, if I'm not mistaken, of the commandments, thou shalt not say my name in vain. And so the Jews took that seriously, and that's why they don't have a name for it. They don't know how to say it properly. And they can't, because even if this Yahweh is the incorrect pronunciation, they don't want to risk it.
it is sometimes pronounced as Yahweh, but that's just one theory. Many Orthodox Jews will not actually say the name out loud and will say Hashem, the name, or Adonai, my Lord, instead.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, but yeah, Hashem is also a very frequent name.
Many Orthodox Jews won't even write words like God down as a sign of respect, and will
Yeah, I've seen that too on like YouTube comments or whatever. They do that quite often.
use something like G-D instead. The Jewish God also takes an active interest in human affairs and interacts with humans on Earth. Humans can develop a personal relationship with this God. God granted humanity free will, and they, like Jacob, can wrestle with God and find and relate to God in their own personal way. 3. The world to come. The Hebrew Bible barely mentions heaven or hell. Heaven is kind of just a place where God lives. It does mention a place called Sheol, but it's kind of just a vague underworld where souls go after death. It doesn't give any details. But the Bible does make it certain that the soul lives on after you die. When
Actual footage of a soul being in a different body.
Abraham dies, for example, the Bible says he breathed his last, dying at a good, ripe age, old and content, and he was gathered to his people. The Bible describes a bunch of different characters being gathered to their people, and sinners being cut off from their people. So while the body returns to the earth, the human soul goes somewhere to live with their ancestors.
If I'm not mistaken, Judaism has more of a purification process by which the souls go into the afterlife and are cleansed by holy fire of their sins, pretty much, before they go to heaven. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every soul basically goes into heaven, or whatever that is.
Jews accept that they don't know what the afterlife will be like, or what its rewards will be, but they think it will be based on the kind of life they lived on earth. So they try and follow God's path and commandments as closely as possible, because even if they don't know what rewards they'll receive in the afterlife, they know following God's commandments here on earth will make this world better. Many Jews try to act with tzedakah, or justice or charity. Tzedakah comes from the Torah, which says,
Thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard, thou shalt leave them for the poor and the stranger.
Today many Jews donate
And specifically, I think that it's mentioned in the text that you shouldn't go over your fields again. That is to say, you shouldn't harvest, and make sure you harvested everything, because the rest should be, of course, left to the sojourner, the poor, or the fatherless.
10% of their income to the needy as part of tzedakah.
And I think that's from where the tithe came from in the church.
4. The Messiah. Many Jews today and in the past have hoped for the coming of the Mashiach, or Messiah, which is prophesied in the Tanakh. The Messiah is a Jewish leader that will bring about the Messianic era. They will rebuild the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, bring all the Jews back into the Promised Land, which will bring about the perfection of the world and an end to all hunger, war, and suffering. When the Messiah comes, every Jew who ever lived will be literally resurrected.
Book of Ezekiel, I think. But yes, one thing to keep in mind is, I'm pretty sure, I know this is the case for Christianity, I'm not sure if this is the case for Islam, but the Messiah is defined in those two religions as Jesus Christ. And the reason why Jews don't accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah is because he wasn't the one who liberated them from Rome. That is to say, he didn't bring about a military victory, which is what is more so described as the Messiah within the Bible, in the Old Testament, I should say.
They will then return to Jerusalem to be present when God creates a new heaven on earth. This is why Jewish law demands that Jews must be buried with any amputated limbs they lost in life. Jewish law also forbids cremation, all to keep the physical body intact for when it is resurrected by God after the arrival of the Messiah.
Yeah, I'm surprised about that. I didn't know about that one. Cremation is prohibited, but yeah, it makes sense.
For Jews, the Messiah has obviously not yet arrived because there is still suffering and inequality in the world.
Right.
5. The Talmud. So we already saw the Tanakh, but another book is also extremely important to the Jews, the Talmud. The Talmud is a collection of different books and is over 10 million words long and covers 38 volumes. It is a massive collection of commentary on the Torah and on itself about how the Torah and its commandments should be interpreted. It's filled with debate, legal interpretations, history, ethics, philosophy, and legends. Within a few lines, you can see rabbis that lived centuries apart debating a topic in the Talmud. It's pretty interesting. It provides the foundation for Jewish law and is a guidebook for Jewish life.
This format is really cool, by the way. You have just sections here, and you have triangles. It's really fascinating. But yes, the Talmud is more so like an interpretation of the Tanakh and how it applies to daily lives for Jews.
So those are some of Judaism's beliefs. But Judaism is more than a religion. It's also a people, nation, culture, and civilization. But not a race. There are black, Asian, and white Jews. There are
Yeah, so if you trace them back, they all pretty much come from one place, regardless of whether they are currently living in India or in Africa or wherever else. They all are able to trace their genes back, at least as far as aware that they're able to do so, back to the Middle East, back to that region.
people who are born Jewish and people who convert to Judaism. There are atheist, agnostic, and a buffet of different levels of religious Jews. According to
Yeah, Albert Einstein was an atheist/agnostic Jew himself.
Jewish
yeah.
law, a Jew is a child born of a Jewish mother, or a person who converts to Judaism. Some modern Jewish denominations also now accept descent through the father.
That is more so a recent thing. Reform and Reconstructionist. It's a more like theologically liberal strains of Judaism believe in that, but Orthodox, which is the standard of the day back then and even now, don't see it as such. It is strictly through the mother that a child is considered Jewish, unless of course they convert later on. But then that would be like a converted Jew.
Since the medieval period, there have been two major groups of Jewish people, Ashkenazi and Sephardi. The Ashkenazi are the Jewish community that developed in Central and Eastern Europe. They speak Yiddish, a combination of Hebrew and the languages of Central Europe.
I think it was also a derivation of German or something akin to that. I know it's like somewhat related to German.
Yiddish words like bubkis, chutzpah, and klutz are familiar in English-speaking pop culture because most Jewish immigrants to the United States were Ashkenazi.
It was also spread through the fact that a lot of celebrities, so like a lot of Hollywood, both actors and producers and directors, were Jews themselves. Like Seinfeld, Robert Downey Jr., and Natalie Portman, like a lot of actors or actresses are actually just Jews. And so they have a huge cultural impact on pop culture.
Sephardi Jews are descendants of the Jews of Spain and those who fled from Spain to other Mediterranean countries and North Africa.
So the other group he neglected to mention, and maybe he will later on, are the Mizrahi. And actually, the Sephardi kind of absorbed into the Mizrahi. The Mizrahi are basically just North African and Middle Eastern Jews, which is a broad category, but they're basically Jews that lived in Muslim parts of the world. The Sephardi lived in Spain/Portugal, and what's interesting about them is that basically at that time, for 700, 800 years, Spain/Portugal was occupied and conquered by Muslims. And so the Jews that lived there were living in Europe, but they were living with Muslim leaders in a predominantly Christian populace. And so when the Spanish Inquisition happened, the Iberian Peninsula was retaken by the Christians from the Muslims. Many of the Jews fled to North Africa, and in this case, the Sephardi assimilated to the wider Mizrahi.
They have their own language, Ladino, a combination of Hebrew and Old Spanish, but unfortunately this language is under serious threat of extinction. There are also communities of Jews who do not fall into these two categories, such as the Jews of Iraq and Iran, Yemen, Ethiopia, China, and Georgia.
Yeah, I forgot. Ethiopia had was a Beta Israel, which in the last 50 years or so returned to the land of Israel. But yeah.
Along with many, many others. All these different groups make up the diverse range of Jewish belief and culture. What many Americans and Europeans think of as Jewish culture or Jewish food is really Ashkenazi culture and Central and Eastern European food adapted to Jewish kosher laws. An Ashkenazi will eat schmaltz herring, while a Sephardi will enjoy couscous. An Ashkenazi will celebrate with a glass of schnapps. A Sephardi will go for some Iraq. Ashkenazis call Saturday Shabbos, Sephardis call it Shabbat.
And I think Shabbat has replaced Shabbos when it comes to like a general term or lexicon of most Jews, even those in the West. So Ashkenazis.
Before the Second World War, about 9
Oh, and Shabbat is referring to the Sabbath, which is the day of rest for Jews, which is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, basically evenings.
million Jews lived in Europe, 5 million in the Americas, 800,000 in Asia, 600,000 in Africa. It was just above 15 million in total. About 6 million Jews were systematically murdered during the Shoah, the Hebrew term for the Holocaust. The emigration, expulsion, and extermination of Jews from their old heartlands during the 20th century has made North America and Israel home to the majority of modern Jews. Today there are many different denominations of Jews, ranging from Jewish atheists to Orthodox Jews. Orthodox Jews believe that the Torah is the direct word of God, and they strictly follow its words and commandments. The best known Orthodox Jews are the Hasidic Jews, due to their recognizable and distinct fashion, which has
Yeah, they're fur hats, their long ass sideburns or whatever. Yeah, very distinct. And also a lot of times they wear suits, which is
been
quite nice to look at.
appropriated by hipsters. There is also Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist Judaism, who all cover a wide range of beliefs.
Yeah, I think he's not going to get into their specific history, but I know like generally the history was basically that the situation for the longest time was Orthodox was Orthodox, right? So most Jews were following Orthodox. That is to say, traditional rabbinic Judaism. Until was it like the 1800s where some of them were influenced by the Enlightenment ideas and reformed Judaism to be more in line with the current times. And so that was where Reform came from. And then conservative was like the middle ground between Reform and Orthodox. And so they try to bridge that gap, keeping in more of the traditional elements of Judaism. Reconstructionist and more theologically liberal Jews are basically things that emerged later in the, I think, early 1900s or somewhere along there.
From not believing in a personal or supernatural God and thinking ritual and ceremony have no place in.
Yeah, so like the more theologically liberal you go, like the further away you are from what is traditional, right? Some strains of Judaism doesn't even believe God as defined in the Bible. They might have like some vague concept of the universe or something like that.
The modern world to believing in God and the Torah, but changing their interpretations as society evolves.
Right.
Shabbat, or the Sabbath, or Saturday, is the
Oh, yeah, he's explaining.
seventh day of the Hebrew week and the most important day for Jews. Since God rested on the seventh day, Jews do the same. It is a day of physical and spiritual rejuvenation.
Yeah, and you know, for the longest time, I thought Sunday was the last day, because I guess you know, like we start with the weekday and end on weekend, right? So it just made sense. But yeah, Saturday is actually the last day. Sunday is the first day.
Jewish law prohibits any work on Shabbat. Activities such as doing business, spending money, shopping, housework, driving, using electricity, or even using the phone are discouraged.
Using the elevator, I'm pretty sure, turning on the lights. So like some people will leave, like especially the Orthodox ones, would leave the lights on the entire night or something like that. It's insane, but yeah.
While things like prayer or reading are encouraged. The laws of kosher regulate the Jewish diet. What is kosher? Well, according to the Torah and Jewish law, all vegetables, fruits, grains, and nuts are kosher. When it comes to meat, a kosher animal is one that both chews its cud and has a cloven hoof. Don't worry, I didn't know what cud was either. Cud is a bit of food that an animal chews and then swallows and then vomits back into their mouth and then chews it again, which is why some animals kind of just appear to be chewing all the time. Examples of kosher animals are cattle and sheep, while non-kosher animals include pigs, dogs, rabbits, and, well, humans actually. Kosher animals must also be killed in a certain way, called shahita. This method uses a trained professional with an incredibly sharp knife to deliver a quick death to the animal. Finally, all the blood must be drained from the animal because blood isn't kosher.
Blood is referred to as life source, basically, in Judaism, in referring to the scriptures. And I think the other thing is that kosher laws are pretty similar to halal laws. So, for example, they both don't eat pork. And when it comes to even butchery, halal slaughter requires there to be a ordained imam, not really imam of sorts, where they have to say like a prayer or something, and then in the name of God, have a sharp knife and that kind of thing. So, in many ways, they're quite similar.
Today, kosher food can be bought from kosher shops or recognized by special kosher symbols on products. All shellfish, birds of prey like eagles or owls, and fish without both fins and scales like sharks, whales, and porpoises are not kosher.
And there are always exceptions, right? So like if you're in a situation where you're starving and there's pork around, you're gonna eat the pork in order to survive, because the higher priority is, and the higher law of God basically, is that you should prioritize living.
From the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE until today, the synagogue has been the center of Jewish life and worship. In every synagogue, you'll find a handwritten Torah scroll, which is read aloud during services. You'll also find a rabbi. A rabbi is a trained Jewish scholar and interpreter of Jewish law. They conduct many Jewish events such as circumcisions, bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, and funerals.
Bat mitzvah is more of a, actually no, even bar mitzvah, it was more of a, I guess, historically new concept. I think in the last few centuries or something like that, bar mitzvah became a thing, which was basically celebrating when a Jewish boy would turn 13 and considered an adult, or basically enter the age of accountability. And bat mitzvah was more of an even more recent thing, in which the same was done to girls. But neither practices are found in the Tanakh or in the Talmud, if I'm not mistaken.
While there, you may notice some people wearing a kippah, also known as a yarmulke, on their heads. Judaism originated in the Middle East, where a sign of respect to God is to cover one's head. Orthodox Jews believe that they are always in the presence of God, so they wear a kippah at all times, while more liberal Jews wear a kippah sometimes.
Yeah, and this white kippah is usually worn by conservative or I guess reform or whatever other strain of Judaism when they enter synagogue, right? So they have those available for them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the kippah is not found in the Tanakh either, but it just became like a sort of practice over time. It could be in a Talmud. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, sometimes Jewish men will wear like baseball caps simply because they're more normal or more commonplace in society in order to prevent, persecution or targeting, because having kippah makes you stand out.
You might also notice that many Orthodox Jews have long curly hair on the sides of their head. These are called peyot. And Orthodox Jews do not cut their hair because of a command in the Torah that says, "Ye shall not round the corner of your heads."
Yeah, so like Judaism is very interesting because rabbis will interpret it such that they will have like the most random interpretations. Like they will either quite take it very literally, like with this rounding of the head thing, or they may have loopholes around certain provisions in the commandments or mitzvahs.
You can learn more about synagogues, the history of the Jewish people, and much, much more in the gorgeous documentary series Sacred Spaces over on CuriosityStream.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this video. I might have honestly talked way too much here, but I hope this is an insightful video for you guys. And yeah, please correct me if I'm wrong, if I made any assumptions that weren't true, because again, I'm not a Jew, so I never actually even been to synagogue, like attended synagogue, I should say. So I have very little knowledge of Judaism in its entirety. I know some broad strokes here and there, but that's basically it. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.